Hello YouTube, this is Awakens 3.75, and today we're taking a look at the Star Wars The Force Awakens 3.75-inch mission series. This time we're going to take a look at Wave 3 of the Desert Assortment of the Star Wars The Force Awakens toy line. Now, this time for this wave I decided to put them all as separate reviews because I think it'll be a lot easier to run down the figures that are in these waves, and at the same time this happens to be the only complete wave of the Series 3 figures released up to this point. I've not been able to find some of the assortments, and I only have 2 of the Force assortments, so I'm just going to have to wait in order to get the rest of the assortments of Wave 3 of the 3.75-inch mission series. So anyways, we're going to take a look at this wave first. First, we're going to take a look at the box of Finn. Finn, also known as FN2187, when he was originally a Stormtrooper at the beginning of the film, eventually he defected to the Rebel cause, which is pretty much explained in pretty much all the trailers. But anyways, it has a really nice picture of Finn up here. And obviously it does have a BAW as normal. Just gonna put this down. Next we got Unkar Plutt, which was the junk dealer from the film, which was seen in a lot of the trailers, and I think was kind of an interesting character. Although he was kind of underplayed in the film, he did have still a quite major role compared to some of the other secondary characters which were featured in the film. So now we just have the back as normal. And then the only figure that is not Force Awakens related is Captain Rex and Rebels. As you can see, once again, it does not feature the Force Awakens logo. And on the back it has the normal bio as stated before. Anyways, we're going to take a look at Finn first. Now, just as a standalone figure, you're pretty much getting the same thing you get with other Stormtroopers up to this point. The same amount of articulation, swivels in the shoulders, and in the legs as well. And then he also has a ball-jointed head. Now what's cool is that this is one of the only figures in the Force Awakens line, at least in the standard single-carded releases, that has a removable helmet. Now I have to admit, that looks really sweet. The fact that Hasbro has designed in such a small-scale figure the design as if it had the bloodstain mark as seen in the trailers and so on. And so it's really nice that they actually featured it on the toy as well. Just to have a little comparison, here it is next to the standard Finn from the first wave. As you can see, it's pretty much the same. Obviously, there's going to be a few different paint differences just from copy to copy, but it's pretty much the same head in design. We're going to take a look at Finn compared to a standard Stormtrooper, which is pretty much the same. Once again, it's just a bloody helmet, and obviously, the helmet is a tad bit bigger just to accommodate the head underneath. The only main accessory he has is the standard blaster that all the Stormtroopers have gotten to this point, so there isn't anything real different you're going to get with the figure on its own. He does include a build-a-weapon, which is some kind of cannon that can be held in 2 hands. I'm just going to quickly keep him standing since he's kind of wobbling all over here. Okay. There we go. He does have this weird mechanized cannon. It's very makeshift, kind of, because as you can see, it's got a lot of junk parts all over and so on. I guess it's a kind of a cool weapon. What you can do is, we're just going to store the blaster on the side of his hip here. And then we're going to take a look at the weapon inside of his hands, which he can carry pretty well, actually. I don't have real problems with this falling out, except when it decides to have a little problem going in his hand. But it does fit in quite nicely once it's done. A lot more difficult than it needed to be. Anyways, as you can see, he does have a capability in order to keep it in his hands, and it actually stays on pretty well. It's not going to fall out or anything, so it does work okay, I guess. It's not really something I really care for, but it's still nice that I guess that they added a little bit more play value to these figures once again. Now we're going to take a look at Unkar Plutt. Now Unkar Plutt actually is a quite interesting figure because Hasbro has kind of snuck in an extra joint into the figure's design. His head is on a normal kind of ball joint. Mostly swivels, but it does kind of wobble left and right, so it is a ball joint, but due to the way that his head is designed, it doesn't have a whole lot of movement otherwise. His shoulders, also swivel. Same thing with his legs, as normal. However, he does include an extra wrist joint, which is actually quite interesting. It's Actually quite surprising. This ended up becoming one of the best figures in line just for that alone, since now technically is 6 points of articulation versus the standard 5. What's also cool is that his weapon is some kind of claw weapon. However, what makes this one a lot cooler than some of the others is that it actually has a secondary ability. What you're going to do next is pull off the hand, and you're actually going to plug this on. And I'm actually quite impressed that Hasbro snuck in a little extra play value there, since normally, without it, it would just be a standard figure with just 5 points articulation. But because of the extra joint, it allows this claw in order to spin and so on, and the fact that this can become removable. So I'm actually quite impressed that this figure has a hidden ability. Now this is technically a nod to a deleted scene from The Force Awakens where supposedly Chewbacca, as mentioned in the original films, Han pretty much warned R2-D2 and C-3PO that when Wookiees are mad, they'll pretty much just rip off your arms. Which never actually happened all throughout the original 6 films. Obviously, it didn't exist from the first 3, except for Revenge of the Sith and so on, but just on their own, that now was never kind of mentioned within the main media. However, in this film, they were going to put that scene in, but due to the nature of the scene, it was a little bit too graphical for a Star Wars film, so they decided to leave it out. However, supposedly it happened in the books, so it is still cool that the toy can actually have a secondary ability there, and I think that's really awesome. We also look at Captain Rex, which I know a lot of fans might not really care for since he is based on a Rebels character. I know a lot of the Rebels characters kind of stick around the shelves a lot longer since they're not really a part of the Force Awakens toy line just for the sake of the movie. But it's still really nice to see other characters outside of just the Force Awakens get released in the line. Now what makes Rex really awesome is that he actually has a ball joint, which is actually pretty awesome since a lot of the other Rebel figures only had swivels. So because of that, he can look up just a bit, but due to the way that his head is designed, he can only move around that far, and he can kind of bend left and right just ever so slightly, but there isn't a whole lot of movement otherwise you're going to get there. He does have swivels in the shoulders and in his legs as well. And what also is awesome is that he actually has 2 really great features that are not really present in most of the figures released in this line. First of all, once again, he has a removable helmet, which has a really nice reminiscence of his original Clone Wars helmet. Obviously, it's missing the antenna, and it's a little bit bulkier just because, yeah, he has kind of got a little heftier throughout the years since he hasn't been in battle for so long. So it's understandable that his build is quite different compared to what he was in the Clone Wars. He also features his signature blasters, which are also really great that the figure also includes. Normally it could fit better in his hand, but for some reason today he seems to be having a little problem keeping him in his hands. So let's try to get this done. Okay. There. So now you can actually have him armed up, and that's really cool that he does have the really familiar blasters that he's been carrying for all these years. What's also cool is that he also has functional holsters, which is another rarity in this line, and it's really nice to see this kind of play feature actually on the Force Awakens toys, so that's really cool. His build-a-weapon is this spear, which reminds me of a lot of things that were released during the Clone Wars, since it has that really goofy pressure missile, and just the way the shape of the design reminds me a little bit about Savage Opress's weapon. You can kind of push it and then it'll fly out, but as you can see, it's a little bit more force than your typical kind of weapon. So now, the only thing we have left to look at is how the weapons look combined. So we're going to take the claw piece, which will become the bottom part of it, plug this up here, and then the spear just kind of sits off to the side, on either side. You can kind of plug it in either hook, but I'm just going to keep it on this side for now. And then we have some kind of rotatable turret. I don't know what's with the build the weapons this time. Most of them just become these really weird looking weapon kind of things, but I just don't really care for these too much, and I think really the main focus of the 3 parts is to have a replacement arm for Unkar Plutt. So overall, I don't think the weapons aren't the worst this time around, but they're definitely not something I really care too much for once again. Anyways, that's it for the Desert Assortment of the 3.75-inch mission series of Wave 3 Force Awakens figures. Now, I think this wave is pretty impressive, and I think the rest of the waves released in